Great, fantastic. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on farmers and microbiome farming. I'm Claudia Costa, I'm the Academic Director of Food for Sustainability, and I'm really pleased to be here delving into this crucial topic with you all. And as we will see within today's session, we will explore the intricate world of soil microbiology. It's really important to recognize the role that the soil microbes play in agriculture production. These microbial communities are the unsung heroes of our fields, and they are indeed enabling essential soil functions such as carbon dynamics, nutrient cycling, soil structure maintenance, and biological population regulation. And today, we have the pleasure to have three distinguished speakers with us, and our speakers will be sharing their insights on how understanding and harnessing these microbial relationships can in fact benefit farmers and contribute to more sustainable agriculture practices. So I will start by very briefly introducing our panelists. So we have the pleasure to have Dan Kittredge, Executive Director of Bionutrient Food Association and the Bionutrient Institute. Then we'll be discussing how environmental change affect microbial interaction and their impact on nutrient-dense food production. We'll also have with us David Santos, Senior Project Manager here at Food for Sustainability, exploring the practical implications of microbe research for nutrient-dense dairy and meat productions. And also from Oxford, we have Lucy Manukyan, apologies, Lucy, plant biologist at Deep Planet. And Lucy will be presenting on the impact of advanced technologies on understanding and managing beneficial microbes in various crops. So I hope our audience will be inspired to learn more about these developments and how we can make soil microbiology a powerful ally for farmers. And just before I proceed, just a quick note to remind you that Food for Sustainability offers microbiome soil analysis for farmers. And to this, we use next generation sequencing. We analyze soil microbiome DNA to identify microbial communities that can assist with biocontrol, stress adaptation, nutrient cycling, and bioremediation. So if you wish to know more, please get in touch with us. I leave you here the email, Arruda Lab, that's where the laboratory is based. So Arruda Lab at foodforsustainability.org. And before we begin, let's start, as we always do, by refreshing our understanding of soil microbiology with some eye-opening facts. And I guess Rita has already prepared for us a Slido. Right, Rita? Let's start warming up, the warm-up with our Slido. Rita will just put here on the screen the QR code for us to scan, and also sorry, it's here. So you can scan the QR code, or if you are more comfortable, you can use the tab on your computer by typing slido.com in the hashtag box. Just insert F4S Academy. Let's all jump together on Slido. Rita, what is the first question? What are we going to learn now about soil? So the first question regards to the ability of soil to store carbon. The world soil store about how many gigatons of carbon? Let's vote. So 500, 800, 1,000, 2,500. And we are talking about gigatons of carbon. Okay, so we have our votes. Okay, for those that join later, You can jump on Slido, slido.com, in the hashtag F4S Academy. So, still voting, 20 people, 21. Anyone else wants to contribute to our understanding how much carbon soil store in terms of carbon? I think we have a stable question, so our audience really goes to the high top. One more question: 1,000 gigatons. So the world soil stores about 2,500 gigatons of carbon. And just to give you an idea what the figure means, this is significantly more than the 800 gigatons stored in the atmosphere. And this is even bigger than the combined carbon storage of the atmosphere and all plants. So this vast carbon storage capacity of soil really shows us its critical role in the carbon cycling and carbon regulation. So it's a lot of potential for carbon storage. Very good. Thank you. Now we know. We had an idea. Now we have a more precise idea how much it can store. And now we have a question about creating or building soil. So on average, how long does it take to build or to create 5 millimeters of soil? 5 millimeters it's really a tiny fraction of soil. It's half centimeter. So half centimeter, how much is it? A matter of days, less than a year, more than a century, more than a millennium. So half a centimeter of soil. And to destroy soil, it's a question, it's a fraction of seconds, right? That's not a difficult one. But to build, to create soil, create new, and this is something that the humans cannot do yet, is to create soil. We need to be assisted by all these wonderful microbes that work for us. So, and the majority of our audience says it takes more than 100 years. And you're absolutely right. It takes more than a century to build or to create 5 millimeters of soil. This shows that this is an extremely slow process of soil formation, just showing us the importance of soil conservation. The destruction of soil, as I was saying, can occur very rapidly, but its regeneration is really a painstaking, slow process that can span for generations. Again, let's all be very attentive about what we do to our soil, because this is something that it takes a very long process. Thank you so much for taking part. I think we still have one more question. I have to congratulate our audience. Very knowledgeable. Thank you. So, how old is the soil in Europe? Do you know this one? How old is the soil in Europe? It's less than 1,000 years old. It's around 10,000 years old. Is it around 15,000 years old? Or is it more than 25,000 years old? So we're just starting to talk about very big numbers. So let's vote. And I can share with you that the oldest soil on Earth is thought to be in South Africa, dating back, imagine this, 3 billion years. So the oldest soil on Earth, dating back, is estimated to date back 3 billion years. And so we have voted soils in Europe, specifically in the UK, and this figure is specifically for the UK, are around 15,000 years old. These soils in Europe were formed after the last ice age, which ended approximately 12,000 years ago. The relatively young age of the European soil is the result of the extensive glaciation that occurred during the Pleistocene epoch, which scoured away older soil layers. So 15,000 years old is the thing where we step every single day. That's the amount that it took to build the soils that we have. So thank you so much. I think this was a nice icebreaker. Thank you so much for taking part. I think now it's time to hand over to our speakers. I just need to know if Dan has already arrived. Rita? No? Okay, so I will start you to introduce thank you, Rita, to David Santos. David holds a PhD in agriculture engineering from School of Agriculture here from the University of Lisbon. In the last 7 years, he has dedicated his research career to study of unconventional feedstuff, such as algae and their potential uses in monogastric diets towards increasing the sustainability of pig, poultry, and rabbit production. And it is in this context that he has worked in different European laboratories to carry out research, including Poland, Luxembourg, and Spain. And this experience have yielded several outputs contributing for his publishing record of over 30 papers in international reviewed journals. David has recently joined Food for Sustainability as a senior project manager, where he works in the submission and management of projects related to regenerative agriculture and sustainable food production, specifically Tech for Regen Ag and Lilas for Soil. David, I can see you already have Tech for Regen Ag for us. Thank you so much. The floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for your kind introduction. Thank you for having me and for giving me the opportunity to share our project with our audience. So Tech for Regen Ag is a project that aims to enable technologies for wide implementation of regenerative agriculture in the European context. So it's a project that aims to combine the principles of regenerative agriculture to improve both soil health and animal products. So our consortium combines various types of expertise to achieve our goals, bringing together partners from industry, research and development, and academia. BGI, Building Global Innovators, is a startup accelerator that provides innovators worldwide with the knowledge, tools, and networks needed for success, keeping sustainability and innovation at the core of the process. Zertifier is a Spanish company that uses blockchain technology to develop tools in various contexts, notably in food traceability, intellectual property protection, and file transfer. Yata is another Spanish partner of the consortium, an R&D center focused on innovation in food and processes, food safety, healthy nutrition, and food biotechnology. Finally, Food for Sustainability, as you know, is a non-profit organization focused on promoting soil health through regenerative agriculture practices based on the expertise of a highly qualified team and a next-generation sequencing analysis infrastructure that allows us to analyze soil microbiomes in depth. So this is for you to have an idea of who's working in this project, and now to explain the vision of the project itself and to explain our goals. So we want to empower farmers with the tool set to implement regenerative agriculture in a data-dependent manner, being to perform analysis that justify decision-making processes towards achieving the EU goals of the European Green Deal, such as converting 25% of agricultural land to organic farming by 2030. So all of this with the overall scope of preventing soil degradation, improving soil biodiversity, preventing water pollution from nutrient-less deviation, causing processes such as eutrophication, and to prevent the overall destruction of local ecosystems. Also, of course, what we also want to achieve with this is to reduce the amount of inputs in the farm, mainly on the chemicals that we use as both pesticides and fertilizers. So to tackle these objectives, we dedicated 1.2 million euros to a project with 6 main action areas. So we have a first one dedicated to policy review, where we are analyzing policy frameworks in the European context to provide suggestions in how to improve them in the sense of implementing regenerative agriculture. Work package dedicated to education. Another one where we will implement pilots in farms to demonstrate the benefits of regenerative agriculture. With another one that is connected to the pilots, where we will analyze the data that is yielded from these pilots and to try to establish cause-effect relationships. Another one dedicated to business creation, and then finally one dedicated to consumer awareness. So as I told you, for policy review, what we're doing is currently reviewing the different frameworks that we have in terms of agriculture, to see how regenerative agriculture can be inserted in these policies and improve them, and thereby improving the sustainability of European food production on the long term. And after doing this, what we will do is engage the Consumer Observatory to draft policy recommendations. And then we will launch advocacy campaigns to educate policymakers, to make them aware of the importance of these principles. And now they can help us achieve the results that we want, and to demonstrate the overall positive impact of regenerative agriculture. On the education and training work package, what we will do basically is try to establish partnerships with EIT food initiatives to perform some courses to educate both farmers and students alike, as well as connecting farmers with students that are keen on participating in supported internships. On pilot design and implementation, what we're doing so far is engaging farmers that are already implementing regenerative farming practices or want to make the transition for it, and we provide all the support for it. So right now we're working with dairy farmers in the Azores and with dairy and cattle producers here in the continent, including Lacticoop, which has worked with us coordinating the contact with their farmers. So Lacticoop being a large cooperative here in Portugal. And we are also doing this engagement with other farmers already, with some farmers in Spain, closing the protocol so that we can move forward with this partnership. We also have a partnership with EIT Food Northeast, a collaboration where they have provided us samples from soil samples from Poland, Serbia, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Czechia. And we are analyzing them, analyzing their microbiome to try to identify patterns in the different crops and in the different agricultural practices that were reported in each of the farms that yielded these samples. So to give you an idea of what we're doing in the pilots, which is like a bottleneck of our project in the sense that the work package, some work packages lead to this one, and this one will feed other activities. What we are doing essentially is focusing on animal products, mainly in milk and in soil health. And what we do, for example, is establish a scheme of rotational grazing where we will sample milk before and after rotational grazing and see how the different micronutrients are changed in response to these different diets using different techniques such as the now famous omics analysis. And also we will do a similar approach to soil whereby we will analyze the soil to establish a baseline. We will then formulate a pasture that is according to these results. So in accordance to the nutrient availability in the soil, in accordance with the physical properties of the soil as well. And we will analyze it before and after the grazing itself in order to see how we can improve these different parameters by introducing animals in the equation. The data that will be generated from these pilots will feed a data space called RegenAgX, which has already been launched. And the overall idea of this data space is to provide a reference, to provide cause-effect relationships between different practices, different results that we can obtain, as well as to provide a means for full and transparent traceability. Regarding the business relationship part of the project, what we are doing is mapping startups that work within regenerative agriculture and try to link them with the different pilots that we have, as well as keeping track of the different developments that have been done, and try to study the way that they can be integrated in the current context, not only from an agricultural standpoint, but also from a legislative standpoint. Regarding the consumer awareness side of the project, we will analyze the perception that the consumer has on regenerative agriculture. What are the different traits that the consumer identifies as being positive or negative from regenerative agriculture, how they compare it to conventional and even organic agriculture, and how we can recognize those patterns and leverage them for specialized marketing strategies, and also as a means to have to obtain higher value from the animal products that we're working with. We will also gather samples from our pilots. So this includes taking milk from the animals that are being grazed and animals that are being fed with conventional feedstuffs, taking meat, for instance, and try to identify the nutrients that are accumulated and see the way that the consumer can value the enrichment with those nutrients, and also conduct some panel trials where the consumer will try to identify different traits, organoleptic traits of these products, and how they compare it to conventional products. Okay, so this is just to give you an overview of what we're doing. But I will try to keep this last part more focused on work that we are already doing in the field. We're now at a point where we are implementing these pilots, so performing the baseline studies that will enable us to implement these different approaches. That can go from the implementation of cover crops, from the adjustments of fertilization plans, and basically the overall principle that we apply is that without measuring, we cannot manage, and we need to measure in order to know what we're doing. So if we are in a soil that is depleted of nutrients without any capacity to hold them, it will not serve us much to spend time and effort in fertilizing it only for nutrients to be lixiviated and lost and causing pollution, making us lose in more than the economic front. So I'll give you an example of a farm that we're working with, a beef cattle farmer that is right now fattening limousine steers in a conventional manner. And the farmer is very keen on trying to explore a way to cut down operational costs and introduce rotational grazing as a means to finish animals before slaughter in a more sustainable manner with lower costs and lower overall impact on the production system, and also having a means to maximize the investment that he is currently doing in pastures. So we analyzed a plot, 46 hectares, which right now has a permanent meadow with pine trees and cork oak trees. And we took two samples in areas that were more or less populated with these trees in order to obtain an overview of the overall situation. And what we in fact see here is that the soil is really acidic. It is also very depleted in organic matter, with in one of the sites being below the limit of quantification. And then we have all these colors here that overall indicate us that most nutrients are below the limit of quantification of the methods that we used. And this is not going to not entering too much on technicalities. It tells us that we cannot work from the get-go by introducing animals to the pasture. We need to do something else. And this idea is reinforced by the results that we have on the microbiome, where indeed we found that there is a very high presence of Fusarium oxysporum, which is a fungi that is a causer of damping off. So the plant essentially as a necrosis in the stem, and it causes losses of productivity and even the death of the plant itself. And we also have some root rots that can not only reduce yield but lead to a spread of diseases, of other diseases, and also of a loss of capacity of the plant itself to absorb nutrients. In our analysis, we found that there was an increased activity of the microbiota of the soil in the metabolism of different nutrients, such as nitrogen, iron, and manganese. But this is not very positive, let's say, because the increase in nitrogen was seen as the consumption of inorganic nitrogen by local microbiota, competing with the plants that we have. And then iron and manganese were increased in coherence with its high content in the soil itself, which is very characteristic of soils from center southern Portugal. However, on a positive note, we have a higher tolerance of salinity in the microbiome of the soil, despite having an overall lower indices on health, overall resilience, and metabolism of other nutrients such as phosphorus and zinc. So to solve this problem in a efficient manner, let's say, not so much a time efficient manner, but in a way that makes sense to the local ecosystem, what we are proposing to the farmer is to introduce organic matter at the end of summer of this year in preparation for seeding a biodiverse cover crop. And the idea of this biodiverse cover crop essentially is to increase the biodiversity of the microbiota of the soil, making it harder for pathogens to prosper, and also to increase the amount of organic matter and overall nutrients of the soil, which has many positive externalities, such as having a higher capacity to retain water in the soil. Then this cover crop will not be grazed. It will be kept on the soil until the end of this cycle, until the end of spring of next year or beginning of summer, where it will be used as mulch to protect the soil during summer. Then, at the beginning of autumn of next year, we will implement more compost to the soil and then do direct seeding on a diverse pasture that will complement what we already have and that will be used to introduce the animals. And this is, of course, a theoretical plan. This is not written in stone because, as I said, we cannot manage what we don't measure. So we will have soil analysis in the implementation of both of these crops, the cover crop and the pasture itself, in order to help us make possible adjustments not only on the composition of these seeds, but also on the fertilization of these soils. So with that, I'd like to thank you all very much for your attention. In case anybody of you wants to collaborate with us, being farmers, policymakers, if you think you can contribute to our project, please feel free to reach out so that we can identify synergies between ourselves. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, David. That was a very clear and interesting presentation. And I will start with this last call that you just. And I know that we have some farmers here with us. I could see Flavio, I could see Annabella, Giampiero, and other familiar names. So, David, you are looking for collaborations for this project. So the main goal is really to ensure that we manage to make the relationship between good farming practices and food nutrient density. The project that you present is very focused on beef. You presented some examples of beef. Collaborations, are they restricted to pastures and dairy and beef, or can it be open to other types of crops?
Oh, not at all. It's very open. We're working with dairy farmers. We are working with wheat farmers as well that are working with traditional strains of grains that can be used to produce healthier bread. So we are working with all types of farmers. We are keen on participating with all of them, and we have the means to touch a bit in all types of production systems, being that all the protocols that we establish are, of course, adapted to the local conditions and also considering the objectives of the farmers. So all of the solutions that we proposed are adaptable to the conditions of the farmer and to the objectives that they have. If they want to study more the nutrient density side of things, we can work on that. If they want to touch more on the soil part, we can also go there, or we can go work on both ways.
Can you just, in case we have some interest from our audience, can you detail what would this require from the farmer or the producer perspective?
So the way that we work, so I presented a case study for 46 sectors. We don't need that much of an area. The idea here is to demonstrate the benefits. Okay, so what we can provide is a framework of monitorization so that if you want to make the transition for more sustainable practices, you can dedicate an hectare of your farm to try to do rotational grazing with a small number of animals and see if you can do it and what you gain from it. In case you are already doing regenerative agriculture, we can give you a means for monitoring what you are doing already. So to compare the analysis of your plots of land through time and see how they are evolving in response to the practices that you're implementing. So
Yeah,
we have all this flexibility.
yeah, and you mentioned quite right. This is very important. It's to be able to actually measure what's happening, and so that we have a means to make stronger claims about the food that we are producing. One more question, David. You mentioned the role of the consumers there. Can you explain, can you elaborate why you feel that consumers are also an important part in this project?
Yeah, so a big factor in the current context is that the market often dictates out the ways that the producers will act. So if we are able to transmit the awareness of the to the consumer that there is room for regenerative agriculture, that it is important, that it can produce nutrient-rich products, both animal and vegetable. And at the same time, we can be preserving our soils and increasing the biodiversity of our production systems. I think that we can leverage this information so that farmers can be so that the consumers are more apt to pay a bit more for what is at the same time both a product and an ecosystem service. So what we want to do is to help farmers to delineate marketing strategies that can add value to their actions and that compensate them for these kind of activities.
Yes, and that's very timely when we just had a study coming out just saying that we are losing in terms of the nutrients that we are getting from our food, particularly the vegetables from the last 20 years. Our food is really getting depleted from nutrients. Thank you for this clarification, David. One question, could this also be applied to ecological restoration in burned areas with wild herbaceous plants? That's an interesting question.
Most definitely. It will take perhaps a bit more time, but as we know, we don't rush nature. We work with it, so it's a matter of establishing a baseline, adjusting the priorities of the farmer with the objectives of the project, and we can work in both ways in implemented protocol.
Okay, very good. So if you want to know a little bit more, Anunciação, just drop us an email, and I'm sure David will tell you a little bit more about your specific context. David, another question, I don't know, from Marcus. I don't know if you have all the details here to answer this question. Are you able to share what species of cover crops are you planning to implement in the mentioned case, and why these specific crops, cover crops?
Yes, so on the cover crop itself, I can tell you some species. So we're working with triticale, some oats, as well as some beet species, some wild cabbages, essentially to have a diverse composition of grass, leguminous species, and brassicas, so that we can increase the accumulation of the sequestration of nitrogen in the soil, so that we have a diverse habitat for our microbiota to flourish, essentially. And then on the pasture side, it will be a most simple mixture, but it will be a mixture that will complement this one, made of perennial ryegrass and also some trevos. I'm forgetting the English name. My
Cloves,
apologies.
cloves,
Clovers,
cloves,
yeah, clovers,
cloves.
basically. Hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if needed, Marcos, I think David can then give you a few more details. Um, the video you already have here a supporter, so Herberto is definitely wanted to get in touch with you. He's saying that he's already using cover crops prior to cash crops for 3 years now, and he's based in Alentejo and has more than 60 hectares. So it seems that you get yourself into a very big job, David. So definitely.
Fantastic. Reach out.
Herbe-
We can schedule a meeting for you to present your farm. You already know our project, so we can get working from the get-go.
Okay, fantastic. And we have here a question from Giampiero. Hello, Giampiero. Giampiero asks about regenerative agriculture and whether this strategy is applicable to any European soil, and soil. So Giampiero is an Italian, and the territory where Giampiero comes from is very similar to the one in Monsanto that we know well. In these case studies, is it virtually applicable despite so many control conditions? So basically, I think Giampiero is trying to ask how do we control for all the specificities of the context to apply
Mhm.
these techniques.
So if you're asking me if the case study that I showed is applicable to whatever soil, no, it is not. If you're asking me if the approach of establishing a baseline is correct to any type of soil, I'd say so. So we don't think that there's a one size fits all solution to regenerative agriculture. That's not in the horizon. What we need to do first is to measure, to know what we're working with, and to try to work with the resources that we have locally. So this will, of course, imply that we will have different composition of pastures, working in different soils, which are tailored for different objectives. So I hope I have answered your question. What was the second part of the question, Claudia? Sorry.
The question is, how do you control for all the differences that you have in the environment? But I think you
Yeah.
already
Yeah,
answered.
so yeah, definitely performing monetization. So the plan that I gave you is something that is within the time frame of the next year and a half, which is of course a long time. So this is what we have in store. This is how we will work with, but we'll monitor along the way to adjust the practices that we'll implement.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Keep us posted and informed about your results and the outcome of Tech for Regen Ag. It's really an interesting project. Definitely, I think our food sector also needs, this more nutrient rich food. So we'll be on the lookout. Thank you so much for your time. So
Thank
we're
you.
going to move to our next speaker, and I will now jump to Lucy. Let me start introducing you in more detail. Lucy, she's a plant biologist at Deep Planet, and Lucy is passionate about food security and sustainability, particularly in how advanced technology can be used to address these challenges. Lucy has research experience in using genetic modification technology to create higher yielding crop varieties at the University of Illinois. In her current role, Lucy contributes to expanding the reach of Deep Planet's cutting-edge technology for a more sustainable and secure future. Lucy graduated from Oxford University, where she studied biological science. So let's hear more about Deep Planet's technology.
Perfect. Thanks, Claudia, for the introduction. Just checking if you can see my screen and can hear me.
Yes, all working well from my end. Thank you, Lucy.
Great, perfect. First of all, big thank you to the Food for Sustainability team for the invitation to speak at this event, and to all the participants who are here. It's great to see so many of you here today. I would very much like to echo what David said about the famous adage where, you can't manage what you don't measure. And so today my presentation is going to focus on the role of technology on how we can measure various soil health related parameters, and then how we can assist in managing these on the ground. So to give you a quick introduction to Deep Planet, we're an agri-tech company started in Oxford, and have a team of machine learning scientists, data scientists, agronomists, who are all together with the mission to harness the power of AI and satellite imagery for the benefit of the planet. And the way we do this is we work with sustainability, agriculture, and supply chain professionals at food, beverage, and agricultural organizations to help improve sustainability and support regenerative agriculture practices. We've had a very strong focus on the wine industry over the last 4 years, hence why we have a dedicated platform called Vine Signal. And you can see here a few points on what exactly that covers. But today I'm going to speak more broadly about our Soil Signal platform, which focuses more on soil health and sustainability, reducing chemical inputs and input costs, and demonstrating the effects of regenerative practices, as well as enabling carbon insetting and carbon credit generation, down the line, more at supply chain level. I already spoke a little bit about the team. A few of them are mentioned here on the slide, and we cover quite a big geography, having worked with growers from Australia to US to Argentina and around Europe. A little bit about how our technology works. As I mentioned, the heart of a lot of the analysis that we do is the use of satellite data. So we use mostly optical, but also some radar imagery to be able to derive insights at farm level and at regional level, depending on what precisely we're looking at. We combine satellite data with crop agronomy and historical data collected on the ground, so a lot of ground truth data that goes into these models, as well as data from in-field sensors, a lot of weather station data, but as well as soil probes, depending on what we're looking at. And all of this combines and goes through our machine learning models, and we display the results of the analysis on a web platform where you can log in, see your farm, and look at the various parameters, the various analysis that we've done. So what is it exactly that has prompted us to look at soil health? I mean, it is an increasingly important topic. It's good to see the role of soil health being recognized in sustainable food production, but also nutritious food production. However, one problem, particularly at commercial level and at scale, is that it is very difficult to measure soil health. So traditionally, the way we do this is we go and take soil samples in the field and then do laboratory analysis, which can be expensive, labor intensive, and time consuming. And for commercial production, this can create a barrier to entry, a barrier to establishing that baseline and doing regular monitoring of what's happening to soil health. So we decided to use our expertise in leveraging satellite imagery and looking at things remotely to help farmers cross that barrier, make it a little bit easier to start the journey towards more regenerative production. And there are a few things that we look at. First and foremost, of course, we can't overlook the role of soil organic carbon. Organic matter is really important in improving soil water retention potential, nutrient exchange. It goes in all sorts of things that promote the health of soils, but then the health of the crop that is produced from it as well. And so the first thing that we did was try to understand if we can use satellite imagery to monitor the variation in soil organic carbon in the soil and monitor how it changes over time. So in the image here, you can see that this is a farm in the UK, and the various color scales show the variation in the soil organic carbon available in the soil. This is baselined against a certain date. And if soil testing has been done on the ground, this is excellent because we can use that as to calibrate the model, make it specific for this farm, for this geography, and use it as the baseline reference date, and then see how things are changing month to month, year to year against this reference point. So this does a few things. First of all, it helps to guide decision-making on the ground when it comes to compost application. So which areas are particularly deficient in carbon, which needs immediate remediation. So it goes more towards precision agriculture, targeted application, optimizing inputs, and then reducing costs. It helps to see variation on the ground. And then the other thing we do is look at temporal variation. The power of satellite imagery is we can use historical imagery to see how things were in the past. So in the last 5 years, how has block average carbon data changed, especially if certain initiatives have been undertaken, if management practices have been changed. This allows to understand how has this impacted the amount of carbon available in the soil. We can do this at farm level, like I said, but again, the power of satellite imagery is it's very scalable. It's very easily scalable. It's accessible pretty much anywhere in the world. And satellite data is collected very frequently and at different resolutions. So not only can we find individual farms and understand the dynamics at farm level, but we can also look at regional data and supply chain, especially for producers who have farms across different geographies and are finding it difficult to go in and check everything in person on the ground. So this helps to make that scalable, easy, accessible, and more cost efficient from a monitoring perspective. And then identify how things have changed. This particular image here shows an area in Queensland in Australia, and it's looking at how soil organic carbon levels have changed from 2019 to 2022 in agricultural land. And the ones in blue are clearly leaders that have managed to improve the amount of carbon in their soils, and ones in yellow have had less of a change. Another thing we can do is to assist decision-making on how to conduct soil testing on the ground if growers need this assistance. Sometimes when we speak to growers, they find it difficult to know where to go and take their samples, how to identify the variation in soil type, texture, etc., bulk density, various parameters, to understand and guide their decision making when it comes to taking measurements. We understand this is not done very frequently, usually every 3 to 5 years. So when the farmers do decide to go ahead with testing, they want to make sure that they capture the variation that's available. So we use GIS, remote sensing technologies to do soil stratification and then provide soil sampling plans so that the farmers know where to go and take their samples, and we help with the protocols as well on how to perform analysis and what exactly to look for. Then this data can feed back into, I'll jump ahead and then I'll go back to the other slide. Then this data can be fed into soil organic carbon, soil nutrient models, which then increase the accuracy of how we monitor these parameters using satellite data. So very similar to soil organic carbon, we also generate soil nutrient maps looking at nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and how these various nutrients vary spatially in the field. And these are updated usually on a weekly basis, again, depending on availability of satellite data, which is captured every 3 to 5 days. But of course, depending on weather conditions, sometimes it can be obstructed by clouds. There can be various quality issues. So in general, as a rule of thumb, this is updated on about weekly basis to give an idea of how things are changing on the ground, to help guide fertilizer application decisions. And to further assist with that particular point, we also have introduced a variable rate application tool, which uses our analysis of soil nutrient availability to divide farms into 3 zones of fertilizer application: low, medium, and high, and help to increase, I guess, the optimization, make fertilizer applications more optimized. Again, in principle, this looks very similar to the soil organic carbon tool. This is a screenshot from the platform directly. The model that is working in the background is different. One is specific for nutrients, the other for carbon, but the principle of it is the same. The next thing we look at is soil moisture, and I understand in different sectors of agriculture in different geographies, this has various implications, because some are allowed to irrigate, others are not. But in a lot of geographies, water is becoming very limited, and it is a very important resource, and it's important to manage it properly. And so what we're doing is we're combining satellite data with data from soil moisture sensors that are in the ground, and then augmenting the amount of information that these sensors are able to provide. So usually the sensors will only give information at a certain radius around them. And what we do is we use the satellite data to interpolate between sensors and understand how soil moisture levels are varying across the field and to a depth of 1.5 meters. And then, oh, sorry, I have missed one slide here, which shows the interactive platform. Essentially, it is this image here that shows the different layers of soil moisture, but in an interactive 3D model, where a grower can go, twist it around, understand at different depths how soil moisture levels are varying, and then feed that information when deciding when and where to irrigate, in order to optimize water input and cut down on the use of irrigation water. And then the last thing, I'll go back to the slide that I skipped earlier. This one feeds more into sustainability and carbon insetting projects. So it goes a level beyond looking at farm level soil health data, but more looking at perhaps supply chain level, looking at climate impact assessments, and using the information on soil organic carbon variability to understand what farms across a supply chain have made enough improvement in soil organic carbon levels in order to generate verified carbon credits and additional income for the grower. So at a supply chain level, it helps to show that through regenerative agriculture, farmers have been able to offset certain emissions by increasing carbon sequestration. And then at farm level, it can generate additional revenue stream. This is all very new. It is quite an evolving area when it comes to voluntary carbon markets. I appreciate that fact, and that it can be a little bit confusing, but this is something that people are already looking into, and we have projects in this area as well. And I think that concludes my presentation today about the various things that we consider when we talk about soil health and applying AI and satellite imagery to that. If you have any additional questions or would like to learn more about this and anything else that I had in the introductory slide, please feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. This was also a very clear and beautiful presentation. Congratulations on that. While you were present, I had a question here, and hopefully you can clarify for me. So you mentioned several times soil health. Here at Food for Sustainability, we measure soil health through the detection of pathogens, biocontrol agents, hormone production, and stress adaptation. Of course, we come from a very different perspective. So could you just elaborate what for deep planets are the parameters that define plant soil health? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. So when we speak about soil health, we usually look at three things. First is the amount of soil organic carbon in the soil. Second is soil nutrient availability. And the third is soil moisture. And I understand that from a research and academic perspective, there's a lot more that goes into this. However, the reason we have sort of simplified it to the three factors that I just mentioned is because these are the ones that are most widely measured at commercial level. And these are the ones that feed into management and business decisions, as well as sustainability decisions at farm and supply chain level from a commercial perspective.
Okay, Lucy, you mentioned decisions. Does Deep Planet assist farmers in the decision making, or you just leave at the point where you give, all the information that you draw from sensors, from satellites, and it's myriad of things to collect data?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So we don't provide consulting services, just to put it that way. So we won't be on the ground with the farmer, and we usually take the approach that the farmer usually knows what's best to do when it comes to managing their farm. But what we do is we try to give as much and as useful information to support that decision making as possible. What we do is we provide the data and we help to interpret that. But then to apply that on the ground, usually it's a collaboration with the farmer and ultimately the farmer's decision.
Okay, but at least you have that collaboration stage. Here at Food for Sustainability, what we do, we work very closely with farmers to determine what is going to be implemented. Thank you so much, Lucy. We have a question here. Is it possible to measure crop nutrient content, dry matter content of crops, for example, using your approach or a similar one?
Yes, so this would require its individual model to be developed. And if I understand the question correctly, then we also have some experience with this as well. So a few years ago, we had a R&D project that looked at grasslands and managing grazing in large grasslands in Africa. And as part of that, we used this technology, this approach to quantify the amount of above ground biomass. And this seems in line with the question that's being asked. So yes, it is possible to do this, but we would need to look at the specific requirements, the specific interests there, and train a model for it.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Hello, Rafael. Nice to see you here. Rafael has just raised a question. He wants to know whether it is possible to use your API for internal developments.
So we can provide our analysis through API and integrate it into a different platform. This is an infrastructure that we're building, but the code itself isn't open source. So it will just, give the output. You'll be able to see it and visualize it. But then any additional work on it, we would need to discuss that further.
Okay, so Rafael, you need to convince Lucy to enter in a collaborative project in
We're
order.
always happy to collaborate and work on joint research projects as well. So always happy to hear from you.
Okay, fantastic. But I would definitely encourage our audience to move forward with comments and questions for Lucy. Also because, Lucy, what you present here was, quite complex system, at least at first sight. And it would be interesting to hear from our producers' perspective, if this would be useful, if this requires, investment, and if we didn't even discuss, how much this would cost in terms of knowledge of how to deal and how to deal with all this information. I would really be very, very keen to hear from our audience. So let's just giving our audience a little bit more time. You mentioned that sometimes it's difficult to sample and identifying the places to sample. I will just now move to David. David, how do you do your sampling? How does sampling take place when you're looking for microbiome analysis?
We try to identify the homogeneity of the parcel that we're working with. So if we see that there are clear differences in soil, in height of different points, we try to adjust the number of samples to each of those discerning conditions that we see already. And each of those samples is taken from a set of subsamples. So we cover lots of ground, taking lots of subsamples that compose one single sample. So this is usually what we do to obtain the most representative sample possible, which is really important given the complexity of the soil microbiome.
Can producers collect those samples on their own, or do they need assistance?
They can. We have protocols prepared to send them. We can go there in case they are close by. We can go there one first time to teach them how we do it. Or if they are far away, they can ask us for a protocol. We send them. And if they follow the protocol, they will give us a sample that we can analyze both for the microbiome and for the classical physical chemical analysis.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. David, Rita, can you see Dan in our?
No.
No. Okay,
No.
so something must have happened. I apologize for those that were here also to hear. Then I will, take the most from our speakers. Just one question for both of you. If you were giving a piece of advice to farmers to ways how to harness microbiome farming for soil health, what would that be? Okay, so if we are looking to get the most of all the millions of microbes that live in the soil, that we know play very important roles, what do you think, from your experience, would be the first step for us to start a better understanding and managing of these microbial communities?
Lucy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take the hit. Yeah, I'll answer the question from the experience of having spoken to a lot of farmers who are hesitant and perhaps a little bit put off by the complexity that comes with talking about regenerative agriculture, because as David said, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's quite a broad, all-encompassing topic. And I guess my I don't want to say advice because that sounds too wise, but the first thing would be not to be scared of the topic, because ultimately it is already evident that regenerative agriculture is something that's good in the long term. It might require a little bit of investment upfront, but it will yield benefits in the long term, not only for the environment around, but also for the producer itself and for the quality and longevity of crop production from a given land or parcel of soil.
Yeah, I would also recommend first measuring, and as I said, not being afraid of it. We There's organizations such as ourselves are there to keep you on track, to try to guide you through the results, to try to make the most of the investment that you're doing. And I definitely agree with Lucy. It's an investment that pays off. If you know what you have in your land, you know how you have to deal with it. If you need to decompact your soil, if you need to complement your microbiome with some biofertilizers, if you need to feed them in any particular way. So knowing is definitely a means to a very profitable end, in my opinion.
So knowledge is also the key question for us to demystify and kind of democratize also access to microbiome farming. Okay, thank you very much, Alexandre. A very good question here, or a very good comment here in the chat. You're absolutely right. When I was referring to soil health from our perspective, I meant that a part of the analysis that we do are called soil health. And soil health, in this case, addresses these four topics. But of course, we also have the analysis for the nutrient cycling and the biodiversity and the functionality and the resilience of soil. So thank you so much for correcting me. We are fully aware that soil health is much more than the pathogens and the biocontrol agents, the stress adaptation and the hormone production. So thank you so much. So just before we go, I remind you, we have here just something for you, for those that wish to have a certification, and it's something really, really easy. It's just to understand whether you really followed our session. So we have a very short quiz. Again, for you, it's very easy. It's just either use your mobile to scan the QR code, or just enter the forms that Rita has prepared and very kindly has also posted here in the chat. Rita, what have you prepared for our audience? Okay, so we have here 3 questions. Let's go through. Just 3, Rita? Okay.
Just 3 questions.
Just 3 questions, okay. So, and I think this one was addressed by David. So when organic matter is low, which practices can improve it? So is it about removing all plant residues from the soil, applying compost made from animal and plant materials, avoid irrigation to keep the soil dry, or reducing all organic inputs in the soil? Okay. So this is the first question here. It says 3 because the first one is your name and email. That's why it's a 3 here. The second one, what is one of the advantage of using AI for soil testing? And Lucy very kindly point this very clearly. So AI allows for automated process, improve efficiency and accuracy. AI can change the chemical composition of soil. AI removes the need for soil testing altogether, or AI makes soil testing more expensive and time-consuming. Right? Last one. So how old are the soils in Europe? Do you remember? Less than 1,000 years, around 10,000 years, around 15,000 years, or are they older than 25,000 years? Okay, so the quiz is going to be open. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Apologies for not bringing you the speaker also that we have promised, but I think we were very well served with David and Lucy with very interesting perspectives. You know that you can be in contact if you want to know more. Next week, same time, we will continue with the microbiome farming. We also have, interesting topics to discuss. Let's all come and jump to this webinar together to start promoting and sharing more about what soil microbiome can do for us, can do for farmers, can do for producers, and for the planet. It was a pleasure to have you here, and I wish you all a pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you
much.
all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.